So in this video I'm going to show you how to create VMs, in other words launch servers using Amazon's infrastructure. So the first thing you need to do is you need to create an account for yourself on Amazon. Creating an account is free, but you're going to have to provide them a credit card number. Now by just being in this class you actually will get some free Amazon credits that should be more than sufficient for you to work on your project. So once you have created an account, log into the console, and to add your credits, which you will get the code over email. Just click on your account name, go to Billing Cost Management, and then click on Credits. Then you can just enter your promo code and click on Redeem. Once you've done that, you can start using Amazon, and whatever charges you incur will be charged against your credits. So to start machine image, you actually have to go to EC2, which is the service here on the top left corner. You just click there, and I have actually created what's called an Amazon Machine Image, or IMI. Think of it as a DVD to help you set up a machine. So this is basically a configuration that you can tell Amazon to use to actually create one or more VMs. So to launch a VM, you click on Launch Instance. The next step is to tell Amazon which IMI to use. So again, we're going to click on Community IMIs, and we're going to search for 5C07473. If you just search for that, you'll see that there is an image that comes back, and it has Ubuntu installed, and Tomcat, and MySQL, and a bunch of other useful goodies. So we just select on the image. The next step is to tell Amazon how big of a host we want. And while the image will in theory run on the smallest kind of host, in reality I recommend that you at least run it on an M1.small. So after you've selected the type of host, you click on Next. Here you can specify how many VMs you want to launch at once. Normally we don't need at this point more than one, but you can actually specify more, and you can configure it further. But in this case we're not going to do any of this. We're just clicking on the next step, where you can add an additional drive. By default, a VM will have one root drive. You can actually make this root drive to be either a magnetic drive or an SSD. I actually recommend that you use a magnetic drive because it's much cheaper. VMs that run SSDs are much more expensive to use. Normally you would really need more than a single drive, but if you want, you can actually add more. So next thing we do is we actually tag the VM. We just give it a name, because in many cases you'll have more than one, and you may want to recognize your VMs. So in this case I'm just going to call it demo. The next step is to actually configure what's called the security group, which is a set of firewall policies. So we can create our own security group, or if you've used Amazon before and you have another existing security group, you can actually do that. So I'm going to create a security group that I'm calling demo, and we specify which connections are going to be allowed to this machine. So by default, actually no one is allowed to connect, not even you. So you actually need to at least set one security rule that would let you connect to SSH. Otherwise you won't be able to control this machine at all. And you can actually have it connect effectively from anywhere, from a specific IP, custom IP that you specify, or in this case I'm actually telling it to connect from a effectively current IP that happens to be one of the IPs of the university. And we can add other rules, such as enabling let's say you know, port 80, which would basically be a typical web server. Or if you're using Tomcat, maybe you want to enable, you know, some other port like port 8080. That would be, you know, a custom port. So try to be very conservative with your firewall rules because effectively this is putting the VM on the network, and if you just open it to anyone, well, you know, anyone can try to connect and break into your VM. We then click on Review on Launch. You will see that, you know, it's giving us all these details about, you know, the VM that we're about to start, and we click Launch. Now there is one last step, and that is downloading a set of keys that will actually allow us to SSH into the VM. So the first time around, you're actually going to have to create a set of key pairs. These are SSH keys. You actually just give it a name. The name can be anything you want. And you download the keys. Now it's very, very important that you store the keys somewhere on your local system. If you lose these keys, you won't be able to SSH into the machine, and in effect it becomes, you know, a machine that you can't control, and you effectively have to kill it. So at that point we just click on Launch Instance, and we get, you know, some information about what has happened to our instance. We can then click back on the console, go back to EC2, and at this point we'll see that there are some instances that are running. For example, there is this EC2 instance that we just created and is being provisioned.